and just want to say thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'm joined by Liam Levesque, who's actually in our Vancouver office. Liam, how are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks, Marco. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And my name is Marco Levesque. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Produce8. So thank you all very much for joining us. We have a lot of great information that you might have seen through our press releases this week in terms of really kind of the direction that we're driving the business into. Obviously, when you kind of take a look at Produce8, and some of you actually have, we're a work analytics platform that helps increase productivity in the MSP space and businesses right across the world. This week, we launched some very significant new product releases that I'm really excited about, because I really think they bring a different aspect in terms of how businesses are going to view themselves in terms of how they operate, how they work, and the information that they're actually gathering as a result of the Produce8 platform. The major reason, next slide, Liam, the major reason in terms of why our company exists is obviously we're seeing productivity decline right across the space. When you take a look at, post-pandemic and people working from home, things have not improved. We noticed that from an MSP perspective, tech utilization rates are down, average ticket time, tickets closed, time to resolution. All of these things that are taking place in the business world these days as a result of technology are not helping us. And so when we take a look at this, next slide, Liam, when we take a look at what's really impacting businesses and the MSP productivity, we know that, for instance, technology is having a major impact in terms of the employee experience. The idea in terms of how all different solutions and technologies, the amount of technologies that businesses are using on a daily basis, even employees, how they're distracted by the technology that they use and the different applications that they need to log in daily, obviously have a major impact. And companies just don't have visibility in terms of what they need to do to help the employee. We also take a look at, for instance, meetings. Like, meetings is really something that has escalated, right at the pandemic and people working from home, and the impacts of what those meetings are. I think what's happened over the last little while is businesses have really kind of felt like that's just normal in terms of all the meetings that we have. And we look at it completely opposite at Produce8 in terms of how can we help you understand those types of meetings, and why are those meetings taking place, and who's in those meetings, and what's the cost associated with those meetings. Task switching is a major problem. And then we also know that employee wellness are key critical issues that are facing businesses right across the world nowadays. Liam, next slide. So when we take a look at the Produce8 platform, one of the things is that as we speak to businesses, we understand that, companies recognize today that there are problems, right? There's problems with, as I mentioned, it could be meetings, it could be we don't have data into our business, we don't know what things are costing us. They might be using a whole bunch of different tools to come up with some information, but it's still not giving them the information that they need. If you have a problem, one of the things that you need something that's going to give you feedback so you can do the analysis and then take the action. And that's really where we come in as Produce8. In order to really kind of understand, how do I make a change in my business? How do I make the change? You need a technology that's going to give you that type of feedback, daily, and then that you can report on it and view it as a business. And with that analysis, then you can necessarily have the changes that you need, and then you can start implementing those. And that's where Produce8 can kind of actually come in and help you. One of the things is if you don't have that, if you don't have a technology like Produce8, it's virtually impossible to make the change. We love to use internally the analysis of the standpoint like a Fitbit, or the Noom application that some people use on a dieting basis. A Fitbit is a great little tool because it gives you feedback in terms of, what you're doing. So if health and exercise is something that you're looking at, that Fitbit, starts giving you information. It tells you how many steps you've taken today. It tells you calories that you're consuming, calories in. And then you can make the right type of plan in terms of how you want to adjust your day if for instance, you're trying to get healthier in life. Produce8 works exactly like that. Produce8 starts giving you information and feedback in terms of how things work with you, what you're doing on a specific day, what the business is doing, what your teams are doing. And then you can actually take a look at that information and then you can make the appropriate action. Next slide, Liam. And so when we take a look at it, the three major pieces that I mentioned that, like, when we take a look at MSP businesses today, is obviously there's a major issue with meeting overload. Most businesses now today, that there's no structure in terms of what meetings are taking place. It's very easy to kind of call upon 8 or 10 people to jump on a call for an hour and only have 1 or 2 people are talking on that call. Today we look at that as that's normal business practice, but we need to provide businesses with insight and say, listen, that's not necessarily the best approach that you should take in your business. Maybe those other 8 people that are not talking week over week, maybe they can actually be doing something else. The next question you may be asking yourself is, well, how am I going to get that information? How do I know who's talking and who's not in those calls? Well, that's what Produce8 can actually help you do. We see the businesses that are having decreased profitability and then collaboration overload. For instance, all the different tools that they're using. You see that, for instance, some people, they spend so much time in teams and how they're working on a daily basis. But for instance, maybe they're not necessarily doing the task at hand, the things that we're doing, because they're in chat groups all day long and communicating that way. At the top of this pyramid, to me, is actually probably the most important thing. And what we're really excited about and what we're bringing to the table is organization analytics. When you kind of take a look at your business today, the question that you should ask yourself is, how are we calculating the cost of all of these things that we're doing? How much of our meetings are costing us daily? What are the costs of the calls that are taking place and who's on those calls? What about on the application side? Do we know, for instance, what our applications are costing us? Do we know, for instance, what are the top 3 applications that we're using with maybe very few people are involved and we have license costs that are being unused? And then also from a sentiment standpoint, how are our employees feeling? Like, employee scores are actually very difficult for businesses to capture. We've actually just came out, and we're going to show it to you, is we came out with a new release that's called Sentiment, that's actually going to give you that feedback in terms of not only how you as an employee are feeling and how you're operating daily, but also roll that up into the business so that, C-level people within a business can have a better understanding in terms of what's the pulse of the business going on. Because obviously a lot of the times businesses can have a misconception that things are going well, but maybe the employee satisfaction rate isn't that good. So we'll get into that and we'll show you that today. Next slide, Liam. So when we talk about Produce8, the idea here is that how do we give you back 90 minutes a day, right? And so we know that with our technology, we can help you recover 90 minutes a day that's being spent doing all kinds of different things that are not necessarily impacting the business. And with our customer success team, we will actually work with all of our partners that come into our program to teach them how to get 90 minutes back in their day. And then businesses need to ask themselves, what could we do with an extra 1.5 hours per employee per day that can allow us to drive more revenue, if it's our sales team, our marketing team, or our finance team? The same thing is that we'll take a look at all the different impacts that we feel are having a major issue in terms of your overall productivity and having a high cost in your business in terms of how to carry those, because there's no structure or there's no information around within your business. Next slide, Liam. So you'll see today that through our application, what we're able to do actually is bring in daily insights. And the daily insights are quite remarkable, because I've yet to see a platform that can actually show a cost associated with time in meetings. And we're going to show that to you in a second in terms of really what that looks like in real time. But imagine the power that you can have when you kind of take a look at where are we spending money? Where's the time going in the business? From a C-level standpoint, if you're a CFO, a CEO of a business, and you're taking a look at how we operate, getting key metrics that you can actually make strong decisions on in terms of what's taking place is going to be critical. Next. So as we get into these organization metrics, you'll start seeing that, for instance, we can provide you information on calls, meetings, application usage, digital working hours, and then our sentiment. And these are, for instance, what I call a game changer for any kind of business as you're kind of take a look at what are the next things that we need to bring to the table, but also how do we plan our business for the future is really going to be paramount in terms of how this is going to impact how you operate daily. Next slide, Liam. So as we get into this, you'll start seeing that, for instance, we can start giving you information on those calls. So how much time are we spending on calls? How much time are we spending in meetings? And then we can even break down that information to let you know who's in on those meetings and actually who's taking place in those meetings. The other piece that you'll see that Liam will be able to show you today is that, like, when you're in meetings, you can actually see, for instance, how distracted you are. And that's another important thing, right? Like, how many times are we in these calls, in these Zoom meetings? You may be in a meeting with 10 people, and most of the people behind the scenes are in different applications doing different types of things. Again, all of those things are great for organization metrics, but then how do we impact the user? How do we impact employees to give them information in terms of how they're operating so they can make the right changes to improve themselves in terms of how they work? And at the end of the day, that's really what the application is for. It's to help that employee experience, to help them have better work days. And then if we know that all the employees are having better work days, all of the numbers within the business are going to start improving and start impacting the revenue to the bottom line. Next slide, Liam. When we get into this, as you'll see, you can break this out, for instance, from executives. You can create your own work groups, and you can kind of customize the overall solution just the way that you want. So maybe, Liam, at this point in time, why don't we take everybody into the platform? You can show them exactly what we've built, and then we can show them how some of these things and dollar figures are calculated and how they impact the business.
Sounds good. All right. Yeah. So like Marco was saying, the platform has been updated just this week with all of these new features, and they'll be available to everybody who's already in the account or any new customers. And so we've got two sort of sides to the product. We have for the individual and their sort of fit, like Marco was alluding to before, their sort of Fitbit scores on how their work days have gone and how their current work day is going. And then we have the organizational side. I'm going to focus on that since that's where the new features all are. But we'll talk a little bit about the individual side as well a little bit later. So basically we've added this new dashboard view, and so this gives you a sort of the high level view of the organization that Marco was talking about over any sort of period of time that you want to look at. We sort of default to the current week that you're in. But I can go back in time and look at any previous week or any previous month or even a specific day. And see how things went in those periods on all those things that we were talking about. So here we track our meeting metrics, so our internal meetings versus our external meetings. We can see how much time was spent in all of those things and how those things have changed in this time period. You'll note this is this week's data, so it's sort of a week in progress. We're not fully done the week, so it'll be a little bit off until the week has actually ended to compare it to last week. But yeah, so we've spent so far, we spent 114 hours at external meetings and internal meetings this week. And this is our company data, this is our production data. So these are my meetings and our whole company's meetings that we're tracking in here. And we've also got what Marco was alluding to, this cost associated with these things. We let you put in an average cost for your employees. And so it's just a single rough number to give you a rough estimate of how much this time is actually costing your organization. So we've spent roughly $7,000 in meetings this week as an organization. And then we also have this calls metric side of it, which is sort of like there's some overlap there, but there's also there's a lot of meetings that happen that don't have a call associated with it, and there's some calls that happen that don't have a meeting associated with it. So we show you both of these things so you can sort of keep an eye on all of those factors. And then we also sort of track the source of those calls. So some of our calls we mostly use Slack for ad hoc communications, and Zoom for planned meetings and things like that. So we can track them per application. So the other factors that we bring up here are organization sentiment and our average working hours. So our sentiment is the feature that Marco was talking about, where our employees can, everyone in the organization can sort of report back on how they're feeling at the end of any given day. And we can track that over time and see how that's changing. And we saw a little trend of how that's changed over the course of the period that we're selected here this week. And the same for our working hours. How much time did we on average log as a company throughout the week? And again, this is low because we're still not done our week, but that's what we're showing there. And then finally, we've got our top apps. These are all the top apps that are used across the organization, and how much time is spent in those apps, and how much it's cost us to spend time in those apps across the entire week for the entire team, and how many people are using those apps. So it's really interesting breakdown, because we can see, Slack continually is one of our top used apps, and is one of our biggest cost centers. And it's one thing that we're always sort of interested. But Visual Studio Code, we're writing code a lot. That should almost always be our top app. And HubSpot, the marketing sales team, they should be in there a lot. So it's good that we're seeing those kind of things there. But I'm always worried by seeing Slack there and how much that's costing us.
I think
and then,
maybe what I could say just on that, on the applications, is that, especially as businesses start planning for, let's say budgeting as they roll into the next year, and they're trying to understand not only, all their license costs that they have within the business, but what's being utilized. You can take this tool and you can run your costs for the whole entire year, and then see how much actual time you actually spent in an application. A lot of the times, the old adage where, once you buy a technology, everybody feels that you have to have it, but then you can actually make really, really strong decisions in the business to figure out where we can make some cuts if there's an application that's not being utilized, but actually has a really high cost on. Previous to having something like this, businesses can't make that decision, right? It goes along with some of the other things that you're talking about with regards to meetings and calls, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and so with any of these metrics now, like I can drill in. So this is sort of the high level, surface level, but detail to this. But I can drill in by just clicking on any of these and get into the additional details that we have on these things. And I'm going to go look at a previous week, since this week isn't quite done yet. That we'll have a complete week's worth of data. And so last week, the week of April 15th, I've got all the meeting data for the company here. And so I can see our meeting costs, like I was looking at before. We had a lot less time in meetings last week. We're doing a planning week this week, so there are a lot of meetings. And then next to that, I can also see our trends on this. So this gives us basically, since we started tracking our data, so like we've got 3 months of data history here. How has this changed over that time? And where are our peaks and troughs? And what are the cycles like? So you can see there's some really normal sort of cycles here, and then it really jumps up. And so what was happening on that? Like, these are really interesting things to sort of be able to dig into and introspect on. And then the next level of sorry, go ahead.
Just one thing I want to touch base on there, because I think there's two areas that I see this has a major impact on. One is, if you're running a sales team and you know that the sales team is spending 70% on internal meetings and 30% on external meetings, very easily you have the insights that you can kind of make to say, hey, listen, how do I change this around? It's got to be, a 70-30 external. I can drive more revenue that way. You're spending more time with prospects and customers. The same thing goes, for instance, on, any business on the help desk team, as an example, right? If we know that the help desk team, at an MSP spends way more time internal meetings and external meetings, and then we know that, CSAT scores for the customers are actually down. We're losing customers because we're not spending enough time, or ticket resolution. We need to deal with, have a lot of meetings because, we need to figure things out. Then you can try and figure out as a business, what are the things that we need to do in order to make those improvements, right? And I'll say this, like Bright Gauge reports, PSA tools, and all that kind of stuff, they're not going to give you this level of information that you can make the right type of decisions, on a business.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, very good point. And so the next things that we sort of surface here are some of the interesting ones that let you sort of get some information about the size of meetings that are actually taking place. So how many of your meetings were one-on-one, face-to-face individual meetings? How many had like 3 to 5 attendees? And then how many were like 6+ meetings, 6+ people meetings? And so this can help you get an understanding of like, are we having like these big meetings? Are there too many people in our meetings? Should we start to be focusing on smaller meetings? Which ones are costing us the most? Where are we spending the most time? All those factors are there for you to sort of evaluate and make decisions based on the size of the meetings. The next thing that we do here is we do it by workspace. And so, in Produce8, you can have workspaces where you sort of get everybody together and sharing their data. And then you can look at the data of meeting times and across those individual workspaces. So we're looking at our meetings per workspace. We can see the revenue team had the most time in meetings. That's good. All right, I like to see that. But then I can break it down and I can see, okay, so which were what type of meeting was the most prevalent for that team? And so we can see, okay, here there was a lot of focus sessions. That's good. There's a lot of external meetings. That's good. And then some internal meetings. But again, it's enough information for me to make decisions on it. Is this the right trend that I want to be seeing? And again, we sort of trend this and we associate a cost with this rough cost. So you can get a ballpark idea of how much that time is actually costing you as an organization. And then we do a little bit more breakdown here just over the time period that you've selected. How did the time actually look on a day-by-day basis? I can go on any particular day and see, okay, so this day, we had 8 hours of external, 3 hours of internal, and 18 hours of focus time. So I can see how that is, and I can watch those sort of values change over that time period. And I can do this for a week, but I can equally do this for a month and compare those things. So that's interesting as well. And then finally, we do a sort of per capita breakdown per day. So just to give you a sense of like, how much time is my average employee spending in meetings per day? Is that a number that I'm comfortable with, or should I be asking for more time in meetings, less time in meetings? Whatever your goals are, at least you can then get your data there to sort of tell you something interesting about the amount of time they're actually spending in meetings and how many discrete meeting events they're actually attending in a given day. So that's our meetings view. I'm just going to jump over to calls. And calls, it'll look very familiar because it's a very similar context. We've been tracking calls data for a little bit longer. That feature's been around longer. So you can see I've got more data history here, and it's really interesting to see again how these things change. And as we get into our planning phases here, we can see our number of calls per week go way up, which is very interesting because it's kind of what I'd expect because we're spending a lot more time collaborating when we're planning. But it really helps us get an understanding of like, what are we doing? How are we doing in general? Are we tracking in the right direction? With our time in actual in calling. And so all the same features exist here that exist on the meeting side, but we can look at it from an calling application standpoint in this view. So I can go see on the revenue team where they were doing their calls and how much time they're spending in each application. So yeah, they spent most of their calling time in Zoom, which is sort of what I'd expect. That's good, and I can see those trends over time and those kind of things. So all that information is there, and then again, I can see on a day-by-day basis what the breakdown was, the total amount of time in calls for those days, and in which tools those things occurred. And then finally, the same thing again here. I can see per person per day. What's the sort of average here? I'm seeing about 1 hour and 8 minutes of calling time per person per day, and across the entire organization. So calling data, very, very similar, but a different lens on a similar sort of a phenomenon, and lets you dig in a little deeper.
Liam,
next, yeah.
Could you touch base just very quickly for the people listening? How do we add the applications into the platform, right? So if I'm an MSP and I want to know how much time somebody's spending in ConnectWise, Zoom, Kaseya, like any of the other RMM solutions that are out there in the industry, or any kind of proprietary solutions or tools, how does that work? Because I think the nice thing about our platform, it's so easy to add in the applications to report on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we've got a view in the app of all the apps that you're tracking, but out of the box, we don't make any assumption you're not going to be tracking any apps until you add them. And when we're onboarding you, we go through a nice process of sort of letting you select all the apps that you're interested in. But basically, we've got tons and tons of apps for you to basically to choose from as you come in, and you can select as many as you want. As long as as long as you're on a pro account, you have unlimited apps, and you can add as many of them as you want. As we go through it and add these apps, so I'm just going to choose an app, for example, here. I can pick any of these, but I can also choose custom ones as well. So if none of these apps are the app that I'm looking for, I can also create a custom app. And I won't go into the details here because a little bit, we could use the desktop application to track desktop apps. We can use the browser plugin to track browser apps. And by browser apps, I mean literally any website you want can be tracked. But it's really just like a few extra clicks to go through and say, okay, I'm going to use this, this URL for this website, or when you see this desktop app being used, add it to my app. And then those just get added to that collection of apps that you've got in a few clicks. And for some of the apps like Zoom or Outlook, for example, Microsoft Outlook type products where we have an actual data integration, we just go through the extra step of getting you to go into Microsoft and say, yep, it's okay for Produce8 to look at my data from here, and that's how we start to aggregate all of that data for you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And so once you've done those things, that's how the data starts to appear in here. As long as you've taken those steps, data starts to appear in here, and anybody that you invite to the account will start following those apps as well, and they'll go through the similar flow of sort of saying, okay, I need we want your Zoom calls, and they'll approve the Zoom call connection for their account as well, and that'll let their data start to flow for us as well. Now I'm going to move on to our sentiment feature, because Marco alluded to that a little bit earlier, and I thought it'd be good idea to talk about that. It's next in line as well. So basically, the new sentiment feature that we released gives employees a chance every day to give us some feedback on how they felt the day went. And it's a twofold sort of reason for collecting the data. We really want to focus on, there's the individual side of this application where we're going to sort of coach people into having better work days with all the data that we're collecting. And so by getting their feedback, we can start to look at the numbers that they're giving us and all of the things that happen in their day, and provide them good insights back on, okay, so when these things happen in your day, this is the kind of outcome you typically have. So we can help coach them into having better days by giving us feedback, but also that those numbers can come to the organization in a sort of an anonymized, aggregated way to say, hey, across the organization, your team is feeling roughly, around, they were out of 5, they were reporting about 3.75 out of 5 for the time period selected. And again, we can look at how that changes over time. So I can go back and see, like early April, what was that number? And we can look at trends over time on how those things have looked. Did people have good work days throughout the week, or are there days of the week that are typically better than others, and have higher scores or lower scores? How are these things changing over time? And is this going in the right direction for my business, or am I seeing a lot of low morale, people feeling bad about how things are going? And then the working hours view basically gives you a distribution of how much time people are spending working per day in the organization. And this lens is here really to help you understand, are people spending enough time? Are they spending too much time? Like, have we really resourced the work appropriately so that people aren't having to spend way too much time in doing their work? So we give you a little breakdown in the sort of the number of hours as segments. And so we sort of view like under 7 hours, how many people are working that. 7 to 9 hours, that's kind of the sweet spot. And look, we're seeing most of our employees there, but more than 9 hours per day, we're still seeing about 35% of our employees there. And that's something I want to keep an eye on, because that's over a course of a week. If I was looking at the course of a month as well, that might be really interesting to see. Again, I'm seeing a lot of long work days here, and maybe we need to work on our resourcing for our projects if we're seeing numbers like this. And we give you this distribution to see, so which sort of direction does your work hours skew? Are you sort of more on the high end? Are you more on the low end? What's normal for your organization? And again, the data's there now, so you can make smart decisions based on what you're seeing.
Isn't it like, that's almost like, that's one of the toughest things for any business, right? Like, how do we ensure that we have the right amount of people on teams? If it's a new project that we have to roll out, this is going to give you not only information in terms of like, what's the sentiment of our team, how people are doing, but when you tie it into working hours, and, to your point, if we have a majority of our team spending 35% of their day, working more than 9 hours, then that's an opportunity for mid-level manager to have the conversation with the company to say, look, like, we do need to make investment, right? We have the data, we have the information, that's really kind of showing us, because that's always the challenge everybody has, is like, when do we add people? And, is our team actually being utilized, or are they overutilized? And then if they are overutilized, you'll see here that we'll start indicating to companies that they're at risk of burnout. And then that has a massive negative impact on the overall business.
Exactly.
So great insight.
Yeah. Cool. And then the last view that we have in here is our sort of our view on apps. And this is an interesting one, of course. We sort of come with some of the sweet stuff at the end, but we provide that sort of, and again, Marco was talking about this earlier, sort of are the tools that we're using the most the ones that we should be using the most? And I've got the entire month of April here selected, so these numbers will be big. And are some of our tools actually being used at all? Like, which tools are we investing in that aren't getting used at all? And I've got this is sorted by sort of the time in the app. And so, over the course of the month, some of these apps won't have been used at all. And are we spending a lot of money on sort of like a Canva subscription that nobody in the team is actually using? So these are all super interesting things for us to be able to look at. And so, like, okay, pressure's off. Like, our development team is actually driving this the most. We're spending the most time in Visual Studio Code. That's good. That makes me feel a bit better. And then I can expand this and look at each individual team that we've sort of got set up in the organization, and which team is spending the most time in these things. So I wouldn't expect, the revenue team to be spending a lot of time in here, but I would expect my, development teams to be spending a lot of time in here. So we can look at this by team across the entire organization, and see how they're actually using those tools. And so we can we can see every month Slack is here, and that always makes me a little bit nervous. HubSpot, good. Okay, that's good. I want that there. Zoom, that makes sense to be there. So I can make sense of what tools are being used and get a better sense for how time is being spent in the organization based on just the tools that are being used and where they're being used across the organization. And again, we give you the sort of the rough cost estimate to go along with that. So you got a bit of a sense of how those things are what that time is actually costing you as an organization.
Yeah, I even look at it from the standpoint of not like every business should be utilizing this, because the insights and the information that you're getting are extremely powerful. But within the next 6 weeks, we're going to be launching a partner program. And the only thing, like, when I look at this and I think of the next iteration of like where MSPs need to go, and you take the mindset of VCIOs going in and having quarterly business reviews with their customers and bringing this data and information into that business to say, hey, listen, we're going to help you make strategic decisions, but also how are we going to go out and bring you all the other value adds in terms of what Produce8's in terms of increasing productivity, giving you plans in terms of how to handle your meetings, reduce calls, where are we spending our time. So all of this information is going to be available for MSPs to be able to go to market and resell to their customers as well. So there's another little kind of caveat for people that are on this call today, is that we will have that partner program, but the most important thing is that we want businesses and all MSPs to use it. It's going to be part and parcel of our program. You have to be using Produce8, because once you start using it, then you can actually articulate the value in terms of what this will bring to businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything left from your perspective, Liam, that we want to show anybody?
The one thing that we released that I think is kind of cool, that we didn't touch on from the individual side, we've got these things that are summarizing data at the organization level, but the other thing that we've got is like for individuals. So I've given my morning report here every morning. Sort of if you first come into the app, you're given the opportunity to give some feedback out of 5, how you're feeling about the day ahead. The same thing happens in the afternoon. You can tell how the day goes. It's optional. You don't have to do it, but it's really helpful for you going forward. And also we give you a snapshot of your calendar. We've got that calendar integration telling you how many meetings. I can see my day is going to be absolutely full of meetings. And so I can get a sense of like, how is my day going to go based on the meetings that I'm seeing, and give some feedback based on that. And again, oops, I clicked the wrong button. Then I can, I'm going to look at yesterday, since yesterday's already done. I can see how the day actually went. So I can see, my working hours, my time, and all my different types of apps, calls, and things like that were for that given day. And then we have my sentiment report there, and then we also have our top apps for the individual. So how did your day break down in terms of the individual? So we still have all this lens for the individual, and all of that data is there for you, but we also provide it to the entire organization so that everyone can learn and improve from what we're all doing and seeing.
Yeah, this is like this piece that you're showing everybody here is really, this is kind of like the Fitbit piece that I was referring to before, where we have this, you have this on your desktop. We also have a mobile application as well. I can take a look at it on my phone to see kind of like how my day is going. I could take a look at, how I'm trending also for the week. But I can't make a change in how I work unless I have something like this. So perfect example, before coming to Produce8, I just went about my day, whatever was in my calendar, that's what was positioned in front of me, and I just worked. But now knowing how I leverage Produce8 and how I make changes into my day, I can start figuring out, for instance, am I more productive by having my meetings in the morning and leaving my time in the afternoon for actually doing work, and scheduling my focus time, that I can actually get things done. And then how do I feel at the end of the day, right? And leveraging sentiment, I can start seeing trends in terms of what works well, what doesn't. I can tell you, Liam, taking a look at your day, you're probably not going to feel the best at the end of the day with all the meetings that you have, but
Exactly.
now you actually have data that you can actually go sit down with your manager, and you can say, hey, look, you want to know what, like, this is what my week looks like. I'm in all of these meetings, I can't get the things that I need done. And then as a business, you have the ability to have a right conversation with your management team to try and say, what do we need to do to course correct the direction in terms of where we're heading? Again, without that information, without Produce8, it's virtually impossible to leverage that. Maybe the last thing before we let everybody go is, can we touch base on goals? Because I think goals is one of the most important things that our application actually brings to the table, because by creating goals, you have the ability to start making the change that you want. So if you want to start reducing your time in meetings or in calls, or in Liam's case, how do I figure out, how do I not have so many meetings in the day? Then you can set those goals. So maybe we can show them an example of this, Liam.
Yeah, for sure. So I can create a goal. I've just selected time in meetings as the thing I want to focus on, and I'm going to say, okay, daily, I want to watch this. I want to set a maximum goal of, say, maybe like 2 hours in meetings as my goal, and then I can create that. And then basically what that means is I'm just going to go back to my dashboard now. That's going to appear on my dashboard every day, and then I'm going to. Oh, I'm looking at today's data again. So I'm going to be able to see my my goals. Oh, right, because that's from yesterday. So I'll be able to see. Sorry, my data is a little bit weird. I can see my goal card here every day, and it's going to remind me basically like these are the things that you're trying to be working on. And at the end of the day, I can see exactly how I did against that. So today I'm going to go way past that, because I'm already know I'm going to have 4 hours of meetings, and I'm way over that. And my goal card here will remind me at the end of the day that you blew through that that goal that you've set for yourself, and then and it lets you track that over time. And I'm going to pause my screen here so I can bring up. I've got another example, because my data is a little bit wonky, because
Sure.
these are all of our accounts. But
goals is what I look like. I actually look at it daily. That's probably the most important thing, because I'm probably the worst to get lost in my day. And, a day turns from, 7 hours into 10 hours quite easily. And when you correlate that with the meetings that you had, those days where, you're bogged down in meetings, is pretty difficult, right? Like you just can't get anything done. And that's where you kind of like, you start working those extra 2 or 3 hours a day to kind of get caught up. But then how are you feeling at the end of the day? It's not, you don't necessarily feel like you've been overly productive. And so I think that piece there that you're showing in terms of goals, and then, as a percentage, how are you doing with respect to that goals? That's kind of like the exercise, methodology in terms of, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight and I'm trying to get a little bit leaner. And so these are the things that I need to do. And I think that's kind of where the application will be able to help businesses make decisions and the right ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, the nice thing that you can do with any of these things is you can dig in and you can see how that's trending over time. I've got this goal line that sort of shows me, and every day I can see, how did I do against that? Did I blow through my budget? And I've been doing it a lot this week, but other weeks, that's not necessarily the case. I could look at an entire month here and see how the dog gets. Like, great. Okay. Most of the time I'm sort of doing the right things and I'm staying under my target. This week it's a planning week. Okay, I'm going to have a lot more meetings than normal, but okay, good. So I'm sort of staying on track and I'm following my goals, but at least this way I'm tracking it. I can see it, and I can make, again, like, help me make a plan. And then over time I can try and work on that and decrease my goals or change those things and make new targets, right? But only because I can actually see the data and can work towards those things.
That's amazing stuff. I think, Liam, I think that covers everything.
Cool.
Maybe I'll ask Lauren. You're on the line. Lauren, do you know if there's any questions for us?
Yeah, let me take a look. Okay, we got a question. What is the term of the license and are there any minimums?
Yeah, the term of the license is they're 1-year agreements. Our licensing cost for this solution is $18 a user. So we've priced it out very aggressively because we want to make sure that all employees and all businesses are using the offering in the solution. So and there's no minimums. Like we have organizations that buy 2 licenses from us. They could be 2 consultants that work from home that want improvement in terms of how they work, to large MSPs and businesses. This platform can actually scale with millions and thousands of users. So there's no issues from that standpoint. And one of the things that we're offering actually until mid-May is there's a 25% discount on licensing for anybody that we're working with. So if you're interested, you can speak with our sales team and we'll help you out trying to get the discounts that you need.
Awesome. Thanks, Marco.
Anything else there, Lauren? Are we good?
Just one more. How does the cost of calls or meetings get calculated, and can you use your own costs to figure things out?
Yeah, good question there. Actually, yeah, why don't I'll just show that again since I can do that. The way it's calculated is we let you put in an average cost per user, and I'll just go to and so you can put this in, and the way we built this so far is it's a very like rough way of approaching it, so that it's just across the organization. What's your rough cost per employee on average? And so I could change this number to say 50 or 100, and then I could see my costs get updated right there and then. And once I change this, that's going to persist for as long as I have it set at that. So anybody else who comes and looks at this will see the price that I've set there, and we'll have all of our calculations set to that same number.
Great. It's awesome. Anything else, Lauren?
That's it. Just some good comments.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank everybody. I apologize, for the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning. Didn't start off the way that we wanted, but hopefully, this was helpful for you in terms of taking a look at our platform, our solutions. We'd be more than happy to discuss with you in more detail in terms of how we can help you out and what the solution and technology can bring to your business. If you want to see more of the evaluation of the solution, our team is here to help you. Any questions that you have. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. You did a great job. And thank you, Lauren. And we'll be in contact with everybody soon. So have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you all very much. Bye.